sticking around this evening, and I hope you enjoyed your screening of Flow. Please join me in welcoming Gints Zilbalodis to the stage. I will say we're going to share a mic, so this might be slightly clunky, but we're going to try to make it work. And while he's well, we're both taking seats for that matter. Gosh, it could be any more awkward here. Everyone is welcome to join us afterwards for a reception across the street at Bar Two Lakes. So Gints, I know everyone just saw Flow, but if you aren't familiar, those who are gathered here for Gints' first feature, Away, he made that entire movie on his own, which is a crazy thing to do. Only himself is the crew. So as you were approaching making Flow, how did you approach bringing a full team on to make this? And might it just kind of resemble the journey of the cat in film?
Yeah, exactly. That was intentional. My first experience working with the team is also the story kind of resembles that, and I wanted with my first film that wasn't really intentional, but in this case I kind of set out to do that, and I had a lot of anxiety about that. So maybe like in the story there's a lot more conflict than actually ended up being. Well, we as a team work together. It's very smooth and easy. Although, it's very stressful for me, kind of like figuring it out, because I never even worked in a studio as an animator. Now I had to kind of be in charge of this team, and but yeah, it's the first time basically I was actually directing, because before, when I have an idea I can just visualize it myself. I didn't need to articulate it to anyone, and it was like a new skill I had to learn. So I think that can be great. Then your ideas have kind of purpose. You're kind of it's more intentional. But I was trying to be careful not to smooth out all of the edges and leave some imperfections as well, because I feel like if you're like everything has a reason, you're kind of being super direct, you might lose something as well. So I did want to leave some ambiguity in the film as well, and I had to kind of ask the team to kind of trust that it's going to work once we put everything together, when we have the music and all the animation, and kind of I think with a smaller film like this you can have that freedom where you kind of tell more personal stories in ways also that are kind of more unconventional, and so that's how I did it.
We'll get it. First time. So this film does have such a unique aesthetic. It doesn't look like anything that comes from a major animation studio. How do you achieve that distinct look that the film has?
I think it comes from the fact that I didn't use storyboards, and I guess in pretty much all of the animated films they're done with storyboards, with hand-drawn kind of sketches of the whole film. But instead I kind of create animatic in 3D, which means that I create the sets. I kind of put some characters in there in some key poses, and I take a virtual camera and I explore it kind of almost like a live action location scout, without really knowing exactly what I'll do. And I need that because I know some filmmakers can see the scenes in their head and can know everything, but I don't have that ability. I kind of need to go through that process of discovery, and it's almost another draft of the script where I sometimes deviate from the script. I add new scenes or take some out, and I kind of it's also necessary because I use a lot of these long takes where the camera is moving a lot and turning 360 and going up in the air and down underwater, and with so much perspective changes, it's really impossible to draw all that. So it's much easier to do that in 3D, and I also want that kind of handheld, kind of imperfect movement to the camera, and I can really have all the freedom and control of making all these very complicated moves, but adding these imperfections on top of that to kind of make it feel like there's someone actually operating the camera, and it's kind of impacted by the forces of nature, like the wind and the water, and of course it's all constructed, but my intention is to kind of create something that seems seamless and kind of spontaneous and found, but there's like so much like cheating gone into that to kind of hide all these. Like if you would look around, the set doesn't really work from any other angles. It's kind of all built around these camera movements. So I start with the camera and then kind of build the set, like adding more details only where we see them in the frame. And so that's in terms of the camera, but in terms of the look as well, I didn't want like a photoreal look, but I wanted to kind of have these immersive environments where you can kind of sense all the textures and the wind and the water to kind of get that sense of immersion. Although if you would pause the frame and you look closely, you would see like these brush strokes as well. So it's kind of naturalistic but not realistic. That's our approach, kind of really studying nature but not just copying. It's kind of pushed in some ways, and we only like put detail where it's really necessary. We don't like have detail everywhere. And so that's the backgrounds, but with characters I wanted to like make them more graphic or more kind of stylized. And I think this is an approach that's been done in a lot of animation films, classic animation films as well, where you have these oil painted backgrounds, but maybe the characters are kind of flat colors. And with kind of this juxtaposition, I think you have that immersive aspect, but also I think with having too much detail in characters, they can feel kind of like unrelatable and not really appealing. I think when you kind of strip them down of any of these details, they become more kind of we're kind of projecting ourselves, our own experiences on these gaps, which I kind of leave, and we see our own pets, and everyone thinks that it's their cat, so it's kind of that's kind of intentional, and so that's the balance we try to have.
There we go. I think anyone who knows anything about animation knows that water is one of the toughest things to do, so the fact that it plays such a role in this film obviously means there's some significance to it. So what do you see as the meaning of water in this film, either on a literal level for the cat or kind of metaphorically for the story?
Yeah, it all really started with this idea of the cats being afraid of water and having to learn how to kind of adapt to this new world, and because I didn't want any like antagonists in the film. It's really cats versus nature, or maybe rather the cat versus itself. It's kind of has to overcome those fears, and also the cat has two fears. It's the fear of water, but also the fear of others. Kind of learn trusting them, and the water is used kind of like as a metaphor for showing that other fear, where when the cat is afraid of these different animals, also this water is very scary, and once it starts to open up, the water becomes more tranquil and smooth, and we're kind of using that to express all these emotions that the cat has, so I also didn't like want to explain too much why it started, where it came from, or why it went away. For me, that's not that interesting. I'm more interested in the characters, really. I just start with the characters, and I'm not really interested in like giving long like expositional explanation why this all happened, and I don't really even know like the long backstory of everything. I just know like what happens with the characters, but it is kind of maybe relevant that I think in broader terms to see this devastation happening, and we don't see the humans in the story. We presume that something happened to them, or they might have left, and my own interpretation is that I think they were aware of this flood and they left these animals to kind of fend for themselves, and I think then it's kind of seeing this point of like this story from the animal point of view, I think we care a lot more about what happens than if you would see it from a human point of view. We kind of care more about animals, and we get more engaged with them, especially since they're not like too human-like. They kind of behave like animals, and I think we kind of sense that innocence in them, and we care more about the story this way.
Yeah, there might not be any spoken dialogue in flow, but the animals are definitely talking to each other. How are you approaching writing a screenplay for a film like this? Were you writing out their conversations as if they were speaking?
Yeah, the script took a long time, and this is basically the first script that I finished, because with my first feature away, I just kind of had an outline. I would just improvise the film visually. But this time, because of the bigger budget and the team, we needed to finish the script. And but yeah, I think yeah, we managed to do it, and I learned so much. And we had me and my co-writer Matisse Kajer, we kind of worked on it for a while, and basically it's like half the length of a typical script, because usually it's like 1 page per minute, but this was like 1 page per 2 minutes basically, and it's very like direct, and it just explains what's like directly happening. It doesn't, we don't like add too much like flowery language to kind of make you feel like something, and so it's really kind of hard to convey what is like the final feeling that we are intending. So we didn't even like after like receiving the funding, which yeah, we didn't use the script, and I finished basically the final draft, but I've never read it since finishing it. So I would still kind of make the animatic just based on my memory of the script, and kind of again improvising a lot, and trying different things, and I think you can only do this in kind of smaller productions, and so sometimes it was just much easier for me to show my intention through the visuals and with the music, because I also write the music while I'm still writing the script, and I can show others how it will look with the music, and that's much easier for me to communicate these ideas rather than kind of showing with the script.
How were you getting the animals' dialogue on a practical level? You know, are those really all their voices?
Yeah, it's all animal voices. We didn't use any human voices basically, and yeah, they're real cats and dogs. But basically, yeah, we don't have voice actors or sound designers basically like creating these performances, like from picking and choosing the different voices, and I think we understand what the characters are meaning with each of these moments. It's through their voices, but it's also through the music and all the other sounds and the context and how the camera is framing them. So using all these tools, I think we can manage to get into their heads. But yeah, it was. I learned so much from Gurwal, our sound designer. He's really amazing, and he took a really long time on the sound. Usually, like films do the sound in a few weeks maybe, but like he worked for almost I think like 8-9 months on the sound. So even before we started production, so that means he had to kind of work with the animatic before even like everything was finalized. But that was great because it also gave me some ideas, and I could adapt to using these sounds. And it's like I wanted to have some scenes where the sound really like has some like long sequences with no music, so you can get really immersed in this world, hearing all these textures. But also at the same time, there are some long sequences with no sounds and just the music. So I wanted like yeah, each of those elements to have enough time to kind of develop, and it was also great that we had the music so early, so the sound could be created around the music, and they're not competing with each other. So we know where we'll use the sound and the music, and yeah, so we could be more precise then.
Because Flow is a movie that's not bound by language, it can play across so many different audiences by age or by country. As you've taken the film around the world, you know, how are different people reacting to it kind of across these divides?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that I think they've been reacting pretty like similarly, because it is so like universal, and it's great that like it works for young and old and people and like from different cultures, and so yeah, I think it's because there's no dialogue, it becomes something like it's not told through language, which can be very specific to some culture, but it's kind of like having no dialogue makes it very universal. But yeah, speaking about that, like I think you can kind of reach that universal appeal when you like are actually very specific. If you're trying to be too universal, you can end up being kind of bland, I feel like. And because I think it was kind of a personal story to me, and I feel like I have a feeling that I'm not the only one feeling like that, these kind of anxieties. So being very specific and personal, I think it gets you a better chance to kind of reaching a more universal audience.
Yeah, it is universal, but I feel like I should also point out that it is the Latvian submission for Best International Feature at the Academy Awards. You talked a little bit about how the cat might represent yourself. I'd love to hear if you feel like the film does represent anything in particular about the Latvian character.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to like represent an entire country. Like the people are very different, but I would say like yeah, there's like Latvians are quite like stubborn and want to do things their own way and kind of are very independent. So I guess there is that, but yeah, it's we have like all kinds of characters in this film, so it's about kind of like finding the common ground as well and kind of meeting all these different people or animals but yeah, it's like I consider it more kind of personal story to me, and maybe like the Latvian aspect is secondary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one final question is I don't want to be the person standing between us and the reception for the crowd gathered here. Since everyone's seen the movie now, maybe we can talk a little bit about the ending. I know you are reluctant to give much in the way of explanation, but how are we to feel about the triumph of the ending and kind of what's been accomplished? Noting that still at the end of the movie there are no humans.
Yeah, it's kind of I don't even like. It's hard to say if it's like an uplifting or kind of somber ending. I hope it's both, and I didn't want to end it on kind of this note of the cat overcame its fears and everything's perfect now and everything is solved, and like I feel like I personally can kind of like get better at things and not have too much like I think have less anxiety as I grow older, but I still have a lot of fears and I think I realized that it's something that you just need to learn how to live with. You can't just like fix every problem and so that's the ending where the cat kind of has learned how to swim and has kind of opened up to others, but it still deep down has these fears and anxieties, but with the support of these other animals that kind of learns to live with those fears and this sea creature is kind of representing these fears as well, so yeah, it was that's how I felt, and I was really like anxious about this, like I didn't know for a long time if people will like resonate, if people will understand it. It's quite open-ended, so it took me a while to kind of trust myself that it will work out.
All right, well, as a reminder, you can join us across the street for reception at Bar Tulips, but won't you show Gints rather, show your support of the round of applause for this fantastic film.